All right. Well, hello, everybody. Excuse a couple of technical difficulties there caused a slight delay. We're excited to be here with you. So I am going to call tonight's meeting to order of the South Bend Empowerment Zone at 6:11 p.m. First up on our agenda is board announcements and updates. First item under that is Board of Directors new appointments. And I would like to thank Jasmine and Jeff for their work in that area and let you two take it over to give a report and talk about some of our guests on our call right now. Oh, and I didn't do roll, but we'll do roll digitally based on everybody who's present here in the Zoom. Thank you. All right, so take it away, Jeff, Jasmine.
Great. Thanks, Mr. President. If you remember back in February of 2021, SBEZ board member Milt Lee announced he was leaving the position because he'd accepted a new employment. At that meeting, we discussed the process to fill board openings, and Jasmine and I volunteered to serve as a mini nominating committee. And we opened up applications similar to what we had done in the past. We set an application deadline of March 16th to coincide with when we met last. We did have 9 members of our community that expressed interest and applied to serve on the board. In late March, we decided to move forward on phone interviews with 6 of those applicants, the first in our process, and we did those via phone. And then from there, we decided to bring 4 candidates back to do virtual interviews via Microsoft Teams. One of those 4 decided to withdraw, so we ended up and did 3 interviews with 3 of our finalists. After interviews and follow-up discussion, we really, Jasmine and I came away really impressed with all of the folks that had applied, but in particular, 2 of them that join us here this evening. And so on behalf of Jasmine and myself, the nominating committee, if you will, for the SBZ board, we're pleased to recommend the appointment of 2 new board members. First, Rosa Heistan, and second, Aaron Limro. And both Rosa and Aaron, we think, bring great experience in our community. They fill some needs on the board that maybe are currently unfilled now. Both have been actively involved in the zone. Aaron as a parent, Rosa as a volunteer on one of our committees. And we feel like both of them bring a knowledge base that's really going to be a plus for the board of directors. And as such, we would like to recommend that the 2 of them be appointed beginning tonight. And I'll turn over to Jasmine if there's anything else that she wanted to add about our 2 new candidates.
Yeah, Jeff, you covered pretty much all of it. We were amazed at the people who applied. It was a very hard decision, but I'm so pleased to have Rosa and Aaron here today. So yeah, that's all I have.
So on behalf of that, I'll make as parts of the nominating committee, I'll make the motion that we appoint Rosa Heistan and Aaron Limro to the South Bend Empowerment Zone Board beginning this evening.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. Any board member questions or discussion before we move to a vote? All right, hearing none, I want to just thank Jeff and Jasmine for your time spent on this process. And then I will move to a vote. All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Hearing none, this unanimously passes. Congratulations to Aaron and Rosa for becoming part of our board of directors. I would like, we'll keep it nice short. If you guys each just kind of say hello and introduce yourself, and then we'll move along with the meeting. Whoever wants to start.
I'm really excited about joining the board and looking forward to the connections and making an impact for the community.
Absolutely. I'll second Rosa on that for sure. And I'm excited to be among a group of community members, educators who are on board for this empowerment zone. So thank you.
So thank you. Welcome to the team. All right, so moving along, our next item, it was administrative updates. And Dr. Camacho, if you had something to share there. Excellent. We'll roll.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then board member updates. I don't think we had anything to share either for this month under board member updates, except that now we've added to our board of directors list here, and looking forward to continuing to advance our work. Next is item number 2 is discuss and consider. We've got a list of things to run through tonight. The first on that list is fiscal year 1920 audit. And if you can take that away, Dr. Camacho.
So I'm actually going to pass it over to our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Rob Dygnu, who's going to give an overview.
Hello, just with my face pops up. Here I am to give the overview of the audit, and joining me in just one moment is going to be Dave Aronowski of Aronowski and Company. So just a little bit of context as we get him squared away to join as well. We enlisted Aronowski and Company to complete our audit for this last fiscal year. This is the first annual audit of the empowerment zone. We were really excited to sort of bring him and the team on. So what he's here today is he's going to walk through 3 documents. He's going to walk through our financial statement, he's going to walk through our internal control letter, and he's going to walk through our governance letter. I'll screen share those 3 things from you, and he's going to direct me to sort of look at the most important pieces of that. And Dave, I'll leave it to you to see if there's anything else that you want to add before I move on into sharing my screen here.
All right, can you hear me okay?
You sure can, thanks.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. I am Dave Aronowski, did the year-end audit. And Jeff, I'm a little disappointed, no ice cream cone in this meeting. So from our last finance meeting. Anyway, just want to kind of say what happened here. Back in February, I met on a Zoom call with Robert, and really kind of got some things in place in the sense of learning about the organization and kind of kicking the tires, understanding the organization, what takes place, and doing some general procedures and getting understanding of internal control and things of that nature, fraud risks, and a variety of other things within the audit. And really to get understanding of the organization, the fraud risk, and what kind of risk assessment do we need to do in order to prepare this audit. So in front of you, and I just want to say, Rob was great through this whole time. Every time I needed some information, boom, he got it right back to me, which is very helpful in completing an audit. So in front of you is just the table of contents. So if we want to move on to the letter, independent auditors report. And this is the independent auditors report. And really, if you want to scroll up a little bit, and the opinion is the most important. So the empowerment zone received a clean opinion, which an unmodified opinion, and that's what you want to hear. So going through the audit, going through all the programs and procedures, everything looked good, presented as a whole. So clean audit, so excellent. That's what you want to hear. The next we're going to go to the statement of financial position. And this shows our assets, our total assets, our liabilities, and our net assets. And if we look at our assets of 189 compared to our total liabilities of 123, we see in there's the PPP loan, which is going to be forgiven here in 2021. So overall, solid statement of financial position. We want to scroll up. And we want to look at, here is our statement of activities. So our revenues and gains and our big funding income is the $578,000 that is received in and then expensed out. And we'll notice that the next is our program expenses and then our management in general. And we'll notice that most of the funding that we have, which is really good, of the funding income that comes in goes to our program expenses. And the remainder is management in general that's broken out. I just wanted to just say maybe the board and the finance committee may want to look, since this is our first year of the audit, to maybe look at some of these areas and say, hey, what really is Do we need to look at the programs and add more to the program expenses and or to the management side? And Rob and I talked about that. But overall, it looks great on the percentages and how things are broken down. So if we look at our revenues and our expenses and go back up 1 second, and we look at the change in net assets, that's the money that we made, the $65,943. So you can scroll up. Here is the program expenses and how they're broken down based in the various categories and then the totals. That's what I was just speaking about. You can go ahead and scroll. And here's our cash flow statement. And the cash flow statement basically tells us, hey, this is where the cash came in. These are our changes that we've had within cash. And then that cash at the end has to tie, that 46,000 has to tie to the statement of financial position. And so everything looks good here. Not too much to talk about. And then we dive into the notes of the financial statement. And the first sets of the notes are the significant accounting policies. And if we want to scroll up a little bit, I don't want to get in too much detail here. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right there, the subsequent events. We just want to say that we did take a PPP loan out. We're pretty sure it's all going to be forgiven here in 2021, but we're still waiting for that to happen. Note 2, which is about a year ago, which is new to not-for-profits, shows the liquidity, within the next year. So in our liquidity, we have our cash, some accounts receivable, some funding receivables. So our liquidity right now is 188,000. If we were to have restricted cash in some areas, that wouldn't be liquid to us because it's restricted for certain things. Well, that's not the case here. This is just showing our liquidity and explaining that we are liquid for operational purposes. So you can scroll up. The revenue concentration. You can read this note here. We talked about this in the finance committee and then reworded a little bit. I'm saying that 97% of it is revenues come from the South Bend Community Corporation. And then given the legal relationship with them, the revenue concentration does not present the same risk as it would for other not-for-profits. So what we're saying here is we're all focused on one pot of money coming in. And if something were to dry up there could be a concern, but I just wanted to point that out. Are there any, there's nothing more in the financial statements. Are there any questions or clarifications I can make? All right, and then the next 2 letters, if you want to scroll up. The first letter is the governance letter, which is a required letter given to the board of directors, which, hey, did I have any significant audit findings? What accounting estimates are? You can scroll up, Robert. Were there any significant audit adjustments? If there were, Robert would have known about those prior to the audit. And then secondly, the finance committee, the executive director, we would have said, hey, we have a significant audit adjustment. Just want to let you know this is being made and why it's being made. But there were no difficulties in performing the audit. You can scroll up. No issues with management. So a really clean letter here. So all good. And the next is the internal control letter where we look for material weaknesses. So if you kind of think about a house, you have a front door that the information comes in and out. You have windows that you're looking out of. You have a chimney with smoke coming out, maybe some risks that are there. And we want to be able to have monitoring that's going on. So the finance committee is monitoring. You also have Kruger and Lawton that is doing your CFO area. So they're looking at things. So you can take a look at this. And I also that with Robert, the policies and procedures that were in place, and we really discussed these, and these were given to me. And after reviewing those and what's in place and what's taking place and moving forward with the organization, there were no material weaknesses or no deficiencies that would result in material weakness. So that is good. So next year when the audit is done, we always revisit these and we always kick the tires and test these and see if those same policies and procedures that are within the organization that are happening among the accounting functions are still in place, so we can avoid that lack of segregation of duties or any material weaknesses. Any questions here? I just want to say that concludes my report. I want to the board and Robert for giving us the opportunity to do this audit. And it was great working with him and the team.
Thank you, Dave.
Any questions?
No questions, just a comment and a thank you to Dr. Camacho and Rob for your leadership. Obviously, the financial health of the organization is critical to our effort to accomplish the goals that we set up. And obviously, we've had to create this system from scratch and kind of put all the practices in place. So hats off to both of you for doing that. And I think the audit's an important step to get a third party to take a look at. And David, thank you for your time and coming to understand. But thank you especially to our leadership for making this go.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. So if that's it, I'll go ahead and sign off here and you guys can continue on.
Thank you, David.
Have a great evening. Thanks.
Any other comments on that, Rob, before we move on to the next item?
No, sir. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you. Good job, Rob. Thank you. All right. So moving down our agenda item is number B, which is our 2021-2022 improvement strategy. And Dr. Camacho, I'll let you take that away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sam. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So I'm really excited to present next year's strategy to you all. As you know, we are currently in year 2 of turnaround, and what a year it's been. We've navigated a pandemic. We've navigated teaching children primarily virtually at the beginning of the year. There's a lot that we've navigated and many, I think, celebrations of our work. And before I dive in, I just want to restate some of our successes. We've increased enrollment by 7%. Over a really tough year. That's a great data point. We've also improved achievement amongst our students, and we've reduced the number of kids who are 2 or more grade levels below, and we've increased the number of students who are on or above grade level. We're in the midst of our 3rd benchmark and final benchmark for the school year. So in our June meeting, I'll actually present on that data to you all, but it's looking good so far. And then the other piece that I'm really excited about is that when we think about school culture and staff culture, 92% of our staff are coming back next year, which is huge for us as we think about things like sustainability and being able to carry strategy forward. So on sort of the foundation of those successes from this year, I'm really excited to present to you how we're going to do our work next year. And before I dive into the specifics, I do want to name all of the stakeholders who informed the strategy. I'm going to start first with our teacher leadership teams. We have an instructional teacher leadership team and school improvement teacher leadership teams at each school. They gave feedback, thoughtful feedback on the strategy, and they're going to see some of their recommendations reflected in this tonight. We also have a parent advisory council that we launched this year. Our parents gave us really thoughtful, great insight and great perspective on what they need and want. Deja Moore on our team led family needs assessment that also is showing up in this work. And she did a phenomenal job in partnership with several colleagues and partners from around the community. And then we have our principal team, right, who informed and gave thoughts and feedback. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that we also survey our students, our staff, and our families every month. And we sought feedback and thoughts from students as well, and the things that they would enjoy to see. So having said all that, I want to start first with our vision, our mission, and our core beliefs. So as you can see, we are focused on, eliminating opportunity gaps, academic ones and social and emotional ones. It is our job to ensure that we're cultivating greatness in our children that already exists within them, so that they can be confident as they pursue their dreams in our city, nation, and world. Our mission is to nurture the mind, body, and spirit of each child. And you can see that we're really leaning into equity, leaning into community, leaning into relationships to do that work. And then our core beliefs in the empowerment zone are students and families first, equity, and excellence. So last year, you all saw me present a different sort of layout for our 5-year plan. And I will say that given this year of COVID-19 and the pandemic, and the challenges that have come out of it, it's forced us to really rethink what year 3, 4, and 5 are going to look like in the empowerment zone. So as you can see, in 2019, the empowerment zone was launched, and our focus for that year was really establishing a vision and building a strong foundation for the work. This year, our focus was developing community and building systems of support for students, families, and staff. And we really leaned into that. This year presented a beautiful opportunity for us to do that well. But now you can see that we've made some revisions to years 3, 4, and 5. So next year, you can see that we're going to be focusing on continuing to build some of those systems of support because the pandemic slowed our work down a little bit in that area. And also ensuring that we have a robust intervention and enrichment model for our children, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. You can see in year 4, we will be refining those systems of support and that intervention and enrichment model. And then in year 5, our primary focus will be on instructional, cultural, and operational sustainability. But I do want to say sustainability is not something you think about at the end, as we all know. It's something that we've been thinking about very, very deeply as we've been mapping out our strategy for next year. So I'm really excited because we've finally gotten to the place where we have an operational plan for next year, which I think is going to really accelerate our focus and our ability to sort of make adjustments and pivots if what we're doing is not working. So to be very explicit, last year, we developed a continuous improvement framework. We engaged over 800 stakeholder voices to help guide us on, and we asked the community, we know that we get state test scores every year, and we're going to get those, we're going to look at those, but we need something to drive our work in the interim. And the thing that we really need to drive our work is a framework that we all sort of agree, this is what our purpose is, this is why we're here, and this is what we're going to hold ourselves accountable to. So as you can see, academics and instruction was one bucket, school culture and improving school culture was another bucket, and then family partnership was the third. I've now added a fourth, and I'll be bringing it to the board in June to approve our revised continuous improvement framework that also includes this bucket, which is innovation, organizational health, and sustainability. I think it's critical that we are actually really naming that as an explicit thing that we want to be held accountable to as we look to sustain our work in year 5. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the strategies, what I'm calling strategic actions that are going to sort of drive each bucket. And as you can see, next year, we're going to be focusing on leadership development for all of our administrators, team leads, and instructional coaches. We are pursuing a partnership with the Relay Graduate School of Education, and they're going to really help us build some muscle and some tools and a shared framework and shared language around what it means to be an instructional leader. We're also going to be really making some investments around instructional support. We know with this pandemic year, though we gave great efforts, and as I said, we have a lot to be proud of coming out of this year, we know that we need to have a very intentional strategy to make sure that teachers are supported, that students are supported, and that's going to require more instructional coaches, expansion of our instructional teacher leadership team, and also a partnership with instruction partners to help guide us with some of that work. We are also going to be really doubling down on inclusion support. As many of you know, we asked and requested an audit, a programmatic audit for our special education programming in empowerment zone schools. And there were a lot of really great recommendations that we're taking on because we believe that leaning towards inclusion, which is where you really focus on supporting the child as much as possible in the gen ed classroom, when it makes sense for their disability, right? In the way that it makes sense for the disability, we believe that that's really, really important for us to focus on. We also believe that there are big gaps right now when we look at our English language learners and the systems that we have surrounded them with. Really great efforts, really great staff supporting, but we need to strengthen our support there. So that's going to be a focus for next year. In Futures, we are proposing that Futures Incorporated support our work to strengthen inclusion for children with exceptional needs and for English learners. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we have an instructional teacher leadership team, and our instructional teacher leadership team they really help advise us on strategy. So I literally got so many great suggestions from our instructional teacher leaders on what we should really be sort of investing in next year and integrated a lot of their suggestions. But they also are sort of leaders amongst their colleagues, and they can support them in a way that is really sort of peer-to-peer, which we think is really important. We also are going to be, as I said, increasing instructional coaches. And so it looks like we have some of the wrong language underneath some of these. So I'll just go ahead and talk over that, which we know that in order for our teachers to be able to really lean into the very rigorous curriculum that we've ordered and purchased and implemented this year in Ready Math and then in Wit and Wisdom, we know that it's critical that they have support on staff to really help them with that. We've invested in that. Intervention teachers, the Heggerty explicit phonemic awareness curriculum for grades K through 2, which I actually used when I was a first and second grade teacher. And I was a skeptic at first, and then I was like, this is really helping my kids. One of our instructional teacher leaders recommended this, and I was excited to integrate it into strategy. Also focusing on giving some structure to Writer's Workshop. So Lucy Calkins' Writer's Workshop curriculum is something we're going to purchase for all of our K-5 classrooms. MTSS is EduSpeak for multi-tiered systems of support. And the idea of it is that in a strong school system, no matter where a child is, whether they're sort of accelerating, whether they're struggling, it's a system that enables us to really sort of look at what's happening with children and ensure that we're giving them the right supports. And then when we're giving them supports, that the supports are actually paying off in the way that we would like to see. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about as it relates to this bucket in terms of strategy for next year, and you all have a much longer strategic operational plan in your hands that we're going to post on our website. The physical environment is really important. So we're looking to enhance our physical environments in our classrooms and in our schools. I'm going to talk more about schools under culture, but our classrooms, we really want every single classroom in the empowerment zone, K-8, to have a beautiful, rich classroom library, to have beautiful seating space for kids to sit and read and enjoy books, and also to have a choice center where children have the opportunity to sort of drive their learning as it relates to their core curriculum and their learning. And as I mentioned before, all of this is sort of some screenshots of the strategic and operational plan that we will be posting to our website. But I'm going to dive back in. So the measures of success, these are the things we're going to hold ourselves accountable to. And you can see these are time-bound, largely from what's been put on the slide here. And you can see that we're really going to be tracking different things. So specifically for MTSS and Tier 2 interventions, we're going to be tracking the dates, the duration, the focus, and the progress of our academic interventions and supports. So it's not enough just to say, well, we gave them some extra help. Well, what exactly did we do? How do we do it? Did it have impact? And if not, did we pivot or did we just keep doing the same thing? This way of thinking about our work, I think, is going to really strengthen our children's educational experiences. We also have a goal that, our kids who are 2 or more grade levels below, when we test them at the beginning of the year next year, that they meet their stretch goal on the iReady at the winter and the spring benchmark during next school year. So we've got a fall, a winter, and a spring. We assess them in the fall, see where they are, and that's going to determine sort of what we're going to be tracking in terms of the winter and the spring benchmark. Also, a rubric score on the school quality review indicator of meeting expectations. So Indiana Department of Education has a rubric for improving school quality. And in fact, before there was an empowerment zone, there was a review team that came through and did a report on Coquillard and on Navarre. And we are using this rubric to sort of drive some of our systemic, focus areas. So looking also at the percentage of all students meeting their typical growth goal, again, on those different benchmarks, the percentage of kids meeting their typical growth goal for math, and then a rubric score of effective on the school quality review indicator 2.4, and 100% of students scoring an 80% or higher on common assessments throughout the 21-22 school year. So this is the thing that I'm really, really most excited about when I think about measures of success. We are developing common assessments. So every kid in every grade level across schools will take the same assessment that is aligned to the curriculum. Teachers will then be able to look at that data and see, did my child or did my students meet this 80% or higher goal or not? And if not, we're going to track that and support and make sure we give some extra remediation in that area. And I think what's exciting to me about this is it just gets us to a very granular place in terms of being able to really sort of say, did the child learn this standard or not? And if they didn't, how are we going to come back to it? Related to school culture, I'm just going to call it a few different things here. We've been doubling down on restorative justice, on culturally responsive PBIS. We've been, again, inclusion support is going to show up here because that's going to be a huge focus for our work next year. It's going to be a huge all staff focus for everybody. School culture coordinators, we are going to add one of those positions, and we want to have sort of defined their role a little more. So one will be focused more on student leadership, one will be focused more on family empowerment, and then one will be focused more on community partnership. But our school culture coordinators are amazing, and we're really excited to sort of add that extra focus for each of them. And then we have our Peace Builder coaches, which have been wildly successful, and we're excited to launch elementary Peace Builder positions next year. So we have some folks who are focused more on the middle school and some that are focused more on the elementary school. This year, our Peace Builders were all over the place. And it's a beautiful thing, but we definitely want to support them to have a little more focus for their work. Again, multi-tiered systems of support. We want to hire an MTSS coordinator to advance our work. The physical environment. So in our schools, we want pictures of children in the hallways. We want, clear expectations posted. We want just really clean, beautiful buildings. And I want to just take a moment to shout out our custodial team, who I feel like has really, really stepped up in ways that are really inspiring this year. And I particularly want to shout out our custodian team at Coquillard. Every time I walk in that building, it smells clean and fresh. I see them out and about, picking up extra things that are coming up in the hallways. And it's that kind of care and attention to detail that I think really going above and beyond is something that I think is really going to carry us forward. We're also going to be looking at something called specialized enrichment focus. I'm really excited about this. So each student in our K-5 elementary schools will be able to engage in 2 hours of specialized enrichment every week. And each school has a specific focus, a specialized focus. So at Coquillard, the focus will be gaming and computer science. At Harrison, the focus will be health and medical science, which works beautifully with the medical magnet that's already at Washington High School. Thinking of like a K-12 trajectory is kind of cool and something that we're interested in building. At Wilson, we are going to be focusing on architecture and design science. And at Warren, we're going to be focusing on veterinary and agricultural science. So all of the things that go along with these themes, a specialized time, we really think it's going to enhance our children's educational experiences. And while children are engaging in those 2 hours per week of specialized enrichment, their teachers will be in a 2-hour grade level collaboration where they're looking at student work and planning together. So we're really excited about that. And here you can see some of the measures of success. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see again, like we're being very, very specific about what we really want to accomplish. We want to be true. So on our student staff monthly surveys, we want 90% of our respondents to agree or strongly agree on the focus questions from that survey. And we're going to be monitoring and tracking it every single month. Another thing is, 100% of our evaluation timelines are met by 100% of evaluating administrators. That's really important, that's a really tight process and that it helps people advance their work. For family partnership, you can see some of the strategic leadership actions. We really believe in the empowerment zone, that partnering with families and really sort of standing shoulder to shoulder with them and recognizing the assets and strengths they bring is a really important part of how we carry our work out. So you can see here that we are looking to next year to actually launch parent leadership teams, there'll be a parent leadership team at each school. It's a little different than like a traditional PTO, depending on the kind of PTO. But these parent leadership teams are really focused on informing school level strategy. So really like sharing some power and helping school leaders and teaching teams think through, as we think about school improvement and what we need and where our school currently is, like what are our ideas, our thoughts, how can we help and support it? What are the celebrations? What are the challenges? Bringing everyone together to have those real conversations, I think, is critically important. We are going to expand our Parent Advisory Council to launch sort of 2 sub-councils, one an Exceptional Needs Parent Advisory Council, and the other one an English Language Learner Parent Advisory Council. We think, given the findings of the audit and the attention that's needed, it's really important for us to have that specific focus. We also started this year a Family Emergency Fund. We had a Facebook fundraiser and were able to raise some money, and we used that money to then have this, they're unrestricted funds. So we had this Family Emergency Fund. We have an amazing team of social workers, and sometimes the things that are available in the community don't quite match what the family is needing. So this is another opportunity for us to really wrap around and support our families. There's something called the dual capacity framework, which I'm not going to go into too much, but it's Dr. Karen Mapp's work. And we love it because it talks about how important it is to build capacity, both in our families, but also in our staff, to be able to really truly partner with families. And we're excited to take that work on next year. We're going to be really focusing on, those relationships and making sure that we provide really great exemplars and strategies for building high quality, respectful, and asset-based relationships with families. And then one thing that came out of our needs assessment, and one thing that has been a consistent theme in our surveys, families want to know their child's academic progress more frequently. That's important, I think. Even for me as a parent, I want to be able to know if my child's doing well or not, so I can intervene, I can partner with the teacher and support. So we are going to have a system next year where we do send and share academic progress every 2 weeks with our families to ensure that they're fully clear on how their child's advancing. And we're excited to partner with our teacher leadership team to sort of map out what that could look like. Here's a picture of the dual capacity building framework. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but what I love about it is, again, just really thinking in a more comprehensive way about family and school partnership. So often we try things like strategies that may not be connected to a root cause. In schools that have had lots of challenges, oftentimes like trust is a root cause for why things aren't strong. So I love how comprehensive this model is, and thinking about, family engagement, family empowerment, family partnership in a really comprehensive manner. And then measures of success. You can see here that we really want to ensure that leaders and teachers have established strong partnerships that support all students in learning. And we want, us to be at the meet expectations level for that at the end of next school year. A family monthly survey, again, where 90% agree or strongly agree on the focus questions that we're going to align on with our principals and our teacher leadership teams and our parent advisory council. And then we also have a principal parent interview survey. So what we started this year in response to the pandemic, I really love that our principals did this. I think it brought them closer to our families, is that they would contact parents in their school and just spend time having a conversation with them. We had a set of questions they would ask. One of the questions was, how would you rate your school experience this year on a scale of, 1 to 10? And each school, from the number of interviews that they did, has sort of like this rating from this year, what their families have given them. So next year, our goal is to have at least 8 of 10 stars from that parent feedback. And that's something we're going to be driving towards in our continuous improvement cycles that we launched this year. And then this last bucket, I just want to step back for a minute and just say that the purpose of the empowerment zone was to really sort of make change, right? I mean, we weren't supposed to come and sort of do everything exactly the same as it's always been done. And so I thought it was important to call out in a revised continuous improvement framework this idea of innovation. We should be innovating to see what strategies can really advance and deepen our work. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we're growing our organization in a healthy way with an eye to sustainability, because that's everything, especially in, a financial climate where there's a lot of uncertainty. We find out our actual dollars, during the year here when we get those count days for students, and there can be variability. So we really need to be thoughtful about whatever we're doing right now, why are we doing it, and what is the plan moving forward? So to be very explicit before I dive into this, we have a lot of ESSER funds, and Rob is going to talk about this. We had to sit down and talk about, what is our strategy going to be around this? Do we want to sort of try to, stretch it out as long as we can? Do we want to really saturate our kids and our staff with supports next year to enable them to sort of shore up some things and some losses from this year, and then sort of gradually reduce back. And that's actually the strategy we're taking. So Rob will talk more about that in the budget presentation. But again, these are things that we think are really critically important for our success as an organization. So a marketing campaign we're finally in the place where I feel like this would be money well spent, because we have specialized enrichment programming in each school now. We have like really clear strategy and model and an experience that we can actually market. We also we're going to be moving towards a customized data dashboard. We've already started some of that work by sort of exploring, you know, what's out there and launching some of that work with additional dollars from this year. But this customized data dashboard will enable us to really sort of analyze both sort of in a snapshot level, but also like longitudinally, like how are our kids doing? How are our goals doing? Are we meeting our goals? How's our enrollment? How is our attendance? How is performance on these benchmarks? What's tricky sometimes as an educator is sometimes you get so much data that it's like, how do you bring it all together? Well, the way that we're designing this dashboard is to enable us to do that. And we're really excited about it. We are going to invest in a talent management platform. Folks who have been hired by us, you know, over the past 2 years know that, you know, we've got sort of a rudimentary, you know, Google Doc system that it's just, you know, it was startup world. And so we did what we had to do to kind of get through it. But we're in the place now where it feels like a good next step to invest in a talent management platform. Also looking at organizational policies. We haven't done that a lot this year. And I think as we look to next year, it'll be important for us to really sort of end the year feeling good about the policies that we have in place and feeling good about everything that we have. We also want to continue to invest in anti-racist leadership development. We serve a large percentage of children who are Black and brown and low income, and we have this beautifully diverse community of students and families and staff. It's important for us to be able to have difficult conversations with each other. It's important for us to be able to develop empathy and understand each other. And so that's something that we're really excited about continuing next year. The other innovation that I want to name, and one of the biggest ones for next year, is this performance pay initiative. So we are looking to really learn from some of these performance pay initiatives. Specifically, principals in empowerment zone schools will be able to earn up to $10,000 of performance pay based on the results from their continuous improvement cycles, which we focus on all the things I've presented so far. And then assistant principals have the opportunity to earn up to $5,000 of performance pay. And it's a scale. It's not you get it or you don't. It's like you met, 25%. There's a formula to that we'll be able to sort of bring back to the board. But, we're really excited about this. We're also excited about innovating at Coquillard and Navarre by, in addition to offering that additional stipend for those teachers, to offer them $5,000 of performance pay. At Coquillard and Navarre, we're going to be sort of innovating on our evaluation model, and we're going to be able to sort of connect it to this. And I'm really curious to know and study in our schools where we did this, what was the impact? And we can learn from it. Is it a bad idea or a good idea to scale? We'll figure that out after we sort of learn from this. And then the last thing that I want to say that our new board member, Rosa Heisted, that she sat in on this advisory council. We had this amazing council of community members from foundations and organizations and people who've been doing the work and people who really care about the work in lots of different spaces, really advise us on how do we ensure that we offer a high quality pre-K program next year. We feel a responsibility and an opportunity in this moment to launch pre-K in a thoughtful way, really measure the impact on our children with, how they're growing socially, emotionally, academically. We have decided that we're going to offer high scope pre-K, which is the gold standard, in my opinion, in that field. And we are just going to saturate our children with all the greatness that we can. I have been personally interviewing pre-K teachers because this initiative matters that much to me that it's successful. I was actually an early childhood generalist, national board certified teacher. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. Also, as a former first and second grade teacher, I know the importance of play, of language, of all of these things. And so I think there's going to be such an opportunity for us to really serve our children well in that program. And then again, you can see some of the measures of success. So next year, our focus for increasing enrollment, we want to set a goal of increasing enrollment by 8% next year. We also have specific enrollment targets for some of our buildings that are at lower capacity. And we're going to be monitoring that throughout the year. It's important for a healthy school to have strong enrollment. And while we've seen some great enrollment increases this year, we want to make sure that that continues next year. The last thing that I'm going to pull out from this section is just, I want to call attention to the learning agenda and research partnership. I think it's critically important that whenever we do something new or we try an innovation, that we really study it to really learn from what is working, what isn't working, and it enables us to make really good adjustments. So I'm excited about that. And how are we going to do all this work? Well, here is what we are proposing in terms of, both our empowerment zone, which is the nonprofit arm of us, right? What is our staffing going to look like? There's been a little restructuring based off of what we learned this year. And you can see at the bottom there, just, what we are proposing in terms of next year's staffing, which is, again, we've added a lot of intervention support. We've added enrichment support, and then we've added a pre-K program to each elementary school. So each elementary school will have one classroom, with the exception of Harrison, which will have 2 classrooms because it will also be sort of the beginning of our dual language program. And the model currently for our dual language program is that one classroom you learn primarily in Spanish, the other classroom you learn primarily in English, and you switch. And there's 2 cohorts of children that sort of engage in that. So we're really excited about that. And as you can see, some of the things I also want to call out are just, I think, the cleanness of this organizational chart. I can talk about every single position here and like what it's going to support in the strategic and operational plan that I just shared with you, or actually that I shared with you earlier, but that I'm highlighting at high level here. And again, we're going to post that to our website. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop my share, and I'm going to ask if you have any questions about strategy before I invite Rob Dygnu, our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, to present our budget that is in service to this strategy.
Cheryl, first, compliments on a great deal of work. I think we all are appreciative of the staff and the team and the teachers and all those stakeholders that have pulled this great plan together. But my question is related to maybe this year and the pandemic and just sort of the just to some extent it's been an interruption in all of our lives, and it's impacted some in a positive and negative way. Can you speak to how this last year has influenced this overall strategy in a positive or negative way? I guess what I'd like for parents to maybe understand is the kind of the good or the bad in terms of what this year has done to our effort to get us where we want to go.
That's a great question, Jeff. Thank you for asking it. So I'm gonna share, I think, sort of a positive highlight, and then I'm gonna share a challenge. Okay, so the positive highlight by far is how our staff came together. We have an inspiring, vision-aligned, powerful staff that believes in our children and is operating as a team, which I wouldn't say was like as true in the first year. There were some challenges there, but I feel so proud of the team that's come together. And I think, when we think about both staff culture, when we think about how that staff culture impacts student culture and student experience, and then also thinking about how so many examples I could name of staff who went above and beyond for our kids and for our families. That is something that was really important to us, especially when we were doing things that we knew were hard for families, like virtual learning. We wanted to keep everyone safe, but we knew that was a strain. So we wanted to launch what we called support on steroids, where we were really just doing a lot. So that by far is absolutely something that I think was accelerated and advanced in a beautiful way out of this crisis. Something that I think suffered from this was our desire to really build these multi-tiered systems of support. That was our focus this year. It was really hard to do virtually. It was really hard to do when everybody is like heightened, anxious, and feeling really overextended. And we know that next year we have a huge responsibility to really lean into that, because it's going to be the thing that really sort of gets us there. So that's how I would answer that. But there's a lot more I could talk about. As you know, I like to talk, but I'll be quiet after those 2 points.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would comment, Cheryl, your last comments there. I so much appreciate your recognition of those challenges, because as I read through the data that I think it was Deja worked with and focused maybe on pulling together the surveys of the families, it's apparent that a lot of the needs are just almost impossible to meet over the past year because of COVID. And so I appreciate that we do have a heavy lift coming up, because there are a lot of needs, and how we interact with the families and how we get the outreach to the right people. It's been tough to do this past year. I know you know that. I don't need to tell you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
As a big preschool advocate, I wanted to add in the thank you for the continued work and growth there. And as a runner, I always use the analogy, right, that finishing school is like running a marathon, and preschool is your training, right? And so the student, they got to get ready to run that race, right? We can't just throw them out there. And so I'm excited about that, and that we're going to be able to offer it in all of our facilities. And so I'm really excited to see that moving forward in this plan. So thank you for that. And thank you for the work on the whole plan and for the whole team that went into making that happen.
Hey, Cheryl, one question, and maybe you'll get into this, and I apologize if this is coming up in discussions as we go, but in looking at the structure you laid out kind of on that last slide, I think, I'm just curious if you can answer, how much of that is made possible through additional funding, as from various, CARES Act money, et cetera, versus, and you're smiling, Cardi, oh, here comes the finance guy worried about funding.
No.
And I'm not suggesting I'm concerned. I'm just curious as much as anything, because I think about sustainability and all these things as we march forward.
So Rob is going to speak to this. He's
Okay.
done an analysis of sort of like our overhead over time. But I will say that we have extremely braided funding going on here. I mean, we have been really creative about what funding sources can we use to take care of these different things. What part of our strategy is going to sort of reduce over time, and that aligns with some of the funding that's reducing over time. What things we need to hold on to and sustain. And we want more sustainable funding streams for that. What are we just innovating that we're just going to try that could be like this temporary? So we have braided the heck out of the funding that's going into some of these positions, but Rob is going to speak more to that. Ryan, it's a great question.
Fabulous. I should have known my man Rob would be all over it.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, well then I'm going to transition to my colleague, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Rob Dygnu, and he's going to take us the rest of the way.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Camacho, and thank you, Board of Directors, for this opportunity to present. And I do want to continue with the thanks. And, I've got a first slide about our approach to budgeting, which I'll speak to because I want to highlight a couple of specific components of this. But before I get there, like Dr. Camacho, I want to thank a bunch of people along the way that got us to where we are. So like this budget is a reflection of our priorities, and it's based on the feedback and the information that we've collected along the way. So this included, as Dr. Camacho said, the teacher leadership teams at every single school. This included the Parent Advisory Council, the needs assessment that Ms. Deja Moore worked on within Focus that helped us better understand community needs, our principal team, and the student, staff, and family surveys. Like, we're so grateful. We know we put a lot of those surveys out to our staff, our families, but we're so grateful for that because that information allows us to build a budget based on sort of our own needs. So to that end, our approach to budgeting is what I have listed here on this slide, which starts with a foundational understanding of what our student, staff, and family needs are. When Dr. Camacho in her first year launched that sort of 5-year vision, it was based on an assessment of needs that sort of took place. We revisit this every single year to make sure that we're still on point with an understanding of exactly what our students and our staff and our families need so that we can target resources there. You heard Dr. Camacho present the strategy, like exactly what we're trying to do with academics, exactly what we're trying to do with school culture, exactly what we're trying to do for our families as well. And with the sort of needs in line, with the strategy in line, what can we do, right? There's a lot of different ways that we can go about in making certain investments. And we want to look out there to say what's proven, what's research driven, what are the things that we think we can get the most return on, and what are the trade-offs with this? You know, every single investment that we have, there's some trade-off that we have to consider as we go through this. And as a last part of our process, it's about implementing this really well, but also monitoring our investments. And one of the things that you heard Dr. Camacho present earlier in this presentation was about our cycles of continuous improvement. And she talked about our strategic plan overall. And one of the things you may have noticed is there's very clear outcome measures of what do we expect to see from a needle moving if we're implementing these strategies as we should be. And one of the other components that we're putting in place as well, in addition to those outcome metrics, is a set of sort of implementation or process metrics to make sure that like we're implementing these things with fidelity so that we can say, you know, it's not that this strategy isn't working because we're not implementing it well. It's that maybe they sort of need to rethink this strategy, but along the way through each one of those cycles, we're going to make sure that we have the right things in place to measure our progress. So I wanted to start there. And the only other thing that I want to add here is, you know, our core values play through and through in our budgeting process as well. So when we talk about students and families first, when we talk about equity, and when we talk about excellence, you're going to see here in our presentation the ways that each one of those core values alongside our mission and our vision come through. So the first thing I want to talk about is enrollment. This is our enrollment over the course of this year. And one of the things that you may notice is that our enrollment grew every single month of the course of this school year at every single one of our schools. We're really excited about that. And we're really excited about what our projection means next year is sort of that continued trajectory. And you heard Dr. Camacho say earlier, we are also setting growth targets and goals for each one of our schools from an enrollment perspective so that we've got clear measurable targets for every single one of our schools. But I just need to give a shout out to all of our school staff for what they've done here along the way to sort of increase our enrollment. And we're really excited about what this means for families in South Bend. So I want to start this presentation. You'll see me start with a conversation about revenue. Then you'll see me sort of move through investments. And then you'll see me talk about some key metrics like Dr. Camacho alluded to that are really important to us as we look at our budget. So the first thing, board, that you'll see here is sort of a breakdown of state, federal, and local sources of revenue and how these are changing from last year to this upcoming school year. From a state perspective, you see there's about $2.7 million more that we're receiving. And that's the product of two things. One, the legislature in Indiana, which we're very grateful for, increased the per pupil allotments to schools. So the base grant increased, the complexity grant increased. That's driving about a third of that difference that you see there. The other 2/3 of that difference is the projected increase in enrollment that we've talked about before. And I do want to double down on what Dr. Camacho said is, you know, we say estimated here for a very deliberate reason. Our funding is based on a series of enrollment counts that happens over the course of the year in September, in December, and February. So ultimately what our final revenue is going to be contingent on those enrollment counts throughout the course of the year. On the federal side of things in this middle column, you'll see that we're up about $8.5 million total. That's the product of two things. One, ESSER, the economic stability funds that have sort of come in for education as a result of COVID. And so that's the increase. There's a slight decrease in our school improvement grant as that sort of trends down over time. But altogether, we're up $8.5 million from a federal funds perspective. And I do have a note below, which I'll talk about in more detail on the subsequent slide. Locally, you'll also see an increase here, and this is largely being driven by the referendum, which again, we're very grateful for what this means from what we can do for an investment perspective in our schools, and we can talk more about exactly how we're anticipating using those funds. But all in all, what we're projecting next year is about this $13 million increase in our budget, which is really critical to achieving our overall strategy, given sort of the intensity of needs that we have and what we're trying to accomplish. Again, I'll speak more in detail about exactly what those sorts of investments look like over time. And when it comes to ESSER, these funds that were sort of the CARES funds or ESSER, again, released by the federal government to states to support COVID and sort of the response to COVID, there's been 3 different rounds. We had a round this year that was received for, then utilized over the course of this year. And then 2 subsequent parts of this came out. The allotment from the empowerment zone is $5.6 million for that second part, which can be spent over the course of the next 2 years. The allotment for the third part for the empowerment zone is $12.7 million, which can be spent over the course of the next 3 years. And I want to sort of echo what Dr. Camacho said, is like, we're being very deliberate in how we're thinking about spending these funds. As she talked about, we know that there's a lot of ground that we need to make up from an academic standpoint, a social emotional standpoint with our students and our staff as a result of the pandemic. We're really proud of the progress that we've made this particular year in spite of all of those conditions, and know that we also need to make sure that we continue to accelerate learning in our schools. For that reason, very deliberately, we're saying, let's invest these additional funds over the course of the next 2 years in ways that, 1, help get kids caught up, and 2, helps build capacity and sustain some of these things beyond when these funds are in place. So we're trying to be very deliberate about the intentionality of these particular funds. So shifting on to a sample of these key investments. So we heard the strategy that Dr. Camacho laid out earlier. When we're talking about interventions, we're talking about investing in intervention teachers, intervention apprentices, talking about investing in the tier 1 instruction, those sorts of things. We talked about pre-K at length earlier. We want to launch a pre-K classroom in every single school, every single elementary school, with a dual language program at Harrison as well. We know that our students have significant social and emotional needs that have been exacerbated by the pandemic, and it's really critical for us to continue to invest in social workers and continue to invest in our very successful Peace Builder program. Dr. Camacho talked about the special enrichment focuses at each school, and we're really excited about what that means for kids. And we're really excited to continue to partner with our families and students to sort of share power, create voice, and share voice with them as well. And we've set aside some funds in order to be able to do just that. And I told you at the onset of this presentation that our core values are sort of front and center, our core beliefs. This comes into play when we talk about equity. So we know, for example, that the needs at Coquillard, the academic needs at Coquillard and Navarre, are significant and are in fact sort of greater than other schools in the empowerment zone. And very deliberately, we're choosing to make additional investments in those schools to help address those school-specific needs. So you'll see here, for example, that we spend more, or budgeting to spend more per pupil at Coquillard and Navarre than Harrison, Warren, and Wilson. That, again, is very intentional and deliberate and is aligned with our core value of equity, our core belief of equity. The other thing that I want to talk about here is you'll see that every single year we've been able to increase what's being spent at schools. In 2021, the way that we were able to do that was by sort of spending less at the central office level, spending less in the middle on the centralized services, and pushing those resources out to schools. We're able to increase our per pupil investment in schools this subsequent school year based on those additional funds that you saw from a revenue perspective. And I wanted to sort of put this in context, like that increase in per pupil spending from this current school year to next school year equates out to be an additional $9.7 million that we are directly spending at schools to help achieve our strategy and invest in those key initiatives that we've got listed on those prior slides. And this was the metric that Dr. Camacho was talking about. It's very important to us that we are always looking at what we're measuring at and investing at sort of the central office level and ensuring that we're pushing out resources to schools as much as possible. So what this slide shows is the percent of budget that we are spending at different levels. So the empowerment zone is Dr. Camacho, it's myself, it's the true empowerment zones of staff that you saw on that organization chart. The shared services for all schools, those are the services that we purchase from the corporation. They go out to sort of benefit and support our schools overall. And those school-based costs are the resources that are spent directly at schools or directly in service of schools. So again, one of the things that we're really excited about is, like, despite the increase in revenue that we've had, like, we have been able to keep the percentage of resources that we're spending at sort of the empowerment zone level consistent from the current school year to next school year. And one of the things that we are excited about is to say that based on this budget, we've been able to shift additional resources to the school level that have sort of come out of that shared services for all schools category to prioritize that investment. And again, if one of the things that you're looking at is sort of what happened between 1920 and 2021, that was again related to that comment I made about the central service menu and being able to sort of opt out of things at that level, push some contracts that we had been investing in 1920 actually into school-based positions and prioritize spending at that particular level is sort of what's leading to that change between 1920 and 2021. And then to answer the specific question earlier about the grant funds, the additional positions that you're seeing at that empowerment zone level are in large part being funded by the additional funding, whether it be, for example, through ESSER, as the way that we're able to sort of add those sorts of positions as a way to support a lot of the additional school-based investments that we're making for a lot of the school-based investments that we're making for next year. So I too can be very long-winded and want to pause here to sort of open up for questions from the board about any level of specifics with regard to this budget or questions that you all may have.
So Rob, I'm relatively new here. I want to thank you for this. It's a lovely presentation. The graphics are really helpful. You're tying really nicely into Dr. Camacho's overall vision and view for the work being done. And this is putting a lot of numbers and finances behind. I'm wondering, the idea for pay for performance, was that enabled by this increase in revenue? And if so, in particular, was it ESSER? What made that an option on the table? Was it directly tied to these numbers, or was that already on the table, I guess? Just curious.
Great question. And I'm glad that as a new board member, you're leaning right into answering questions. So asking questions. Thank you for that. Very much appreciated. That performance pay is actually enabled by a different grant, the TSL grant. So it's not necessarily related to the additional funds, but a way for us to use another grant that came in through the course of this school year, which we're really excited about in terms of what it could mean for staff and sort of the development of staff and school leaders as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think hearing no other questions, Rob, if we can move on to the next.
Yeah, I can certainly do that. Thanks, y'all. So in terms of the next section of time is actually the contracts for approval. So I'll actually pause here to see if we need to, if there's anything else that we need to have happen at this moment before moving on to the next section.
And then Dr. Camacho, we need to have a vote on this, correct? Do you approve this? Yeah. So we can do discussion after we have a motion as well. So if I could get a motion to approve the 2021, 2022 South Bend Empowerment Zone budget.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Second.
Second.
Who was that? Is that Ryan?
Me over here, Sam.
Excellent. Thank you. I heard it from this way, so I didn't know. All right, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? I always have to add in my thorough work compliment to the team. And I love any budget that's not just input driven from the staff, but from the families we serve too. So I love that part is there.
I'd also like to say thanks to Ryan and his leadership on the finance committee. I know Rob and Ryan have kicked through a lot of this. Ryan, because of his finance background, gets this a little better even than I do. So thank you for the time and diligence that you have spent, and thank you, Rob, for really making it really understandable for us.
Rob's done a great job.
Thank you, Ryan. Seeing no other comments, then I will move into a vote. So all in favor of approving the 21-22 budget, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that moves forward unanimously. Thank you very much. And then we'll move to our next. So this is the futures contract for 21 and 22. Take it away, Dr. Camacho.
I would love if Rob could come up and just sort of frame the amount, and then I can give a little more detail about what we're going to get for that amount. Rob, if you could do that, that'd be great. Poor Rob, he thought he was done for the night. I'm sorry, Rob.
I'm here. How can I help?
So just for each of the contracts, to share the amount of the contract, and then I'll give a little more background about it.
Yes, absolutely. So talking about futures here for this first contract, this is in the amount of $415,000 total.
Great. So Futures Incorporated is the organization that did the audit that we requested for special education. And that money is going to support professional learning, job embedded professional learning for our special education teachers, for our gen ed teachers on inclusion practices. It's also going to ensure that we have a director of specialized services who will have complete ownership and sort of oversight, accountability of making sure that our program for exceptional learners is everything that it should be for our children and our families. And also an English learner coordinator who's going to ensure that we can get started. We want to actually engage in some analysis of things in a formal way like we did with special education this year. So that person would lead that process. And so that is what this is for. Any questions?
No, thank you. And then just for clarity for the rest of the board members too, one of the reasons this contract's coming before us is because of the size and scope. So that's something that Dr. Camacho and team can't approve on their own.
Dr. Camacho, if I could ask real quick first, one again, I think you mentioned earlier one thing about the zone was we were going to try some things different, and so this is a really different approach to special education. So I appreciate that. So one of the things that I think it's a 1-year contract, as I understand. So one of the things that actually will be really critical then is how we evaluate, their performance, related to that. Could you speak just to a second for how we, kind of evaluate the value that they provide then to the zone?
Yes, we have a very high bar for partners, just like we have a high bar for ourselves. So just as you saw that we have like metrics and things that we're monitoring along the way. Our conversation with Futures before sort of bringing this to the board was, this is what we need. And here's what we're going to need, you all to sort of be accountable to in terms of outcomes. And we're really excited. They have been wonderful partners, very thoughtful, very student-centered. And we really do believe that, they're going to really help us elevate the experience of our students and our families and our staff. That was one of the biggest pain points, is our staff needs support to be able to do this well. So that's why the job embedded professional learning part of this was really important to us, with people that are on site, helping cross-cat teachers write an IEP, helping, a classroom teacher figure out how to implement the modifications and accommodations that the child is legally obligated to. And then the other piece is ensuring sort of oversight and compliance on minutes, because that's really, really important, critically important. So we feel very confident that they're going to do a great job, that we're going to have clear measures of success integrated into our plan, just like what you saw for all these other buckets. Great question.
Thank you.
And we can continue to discuss, but let me first, let's entertain a motion then to approve the Futures 21-22 contract.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
Is that Leslie? Thank you, Leslie. All right, any other additional discussion? I know for new board members, we talked a little bit about this at our last board meeting as well. All right, so hearing no additional discussion, I will move into a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Congratulations, team, again. And then next up is item E, is our instruction partners contract for 2021. And I will let Dr. Camacho and team take that away.
Just from a price perspective, this contract is the amount of $394,564 for the upcoming school year. And in terms of funding source, both of these, by the way, or all of these have been enabled by the additional funds in terms of from ESSER and CARES from a financial perspective.
Thank you for naming that, Rob, because again, we view this as an investment in building capacity in our staff that will remain, long after the partnerships that we've established here. So instruction partners, we actually had them with us in year one, but I think we weren't quite ready. So we're ready now. And what they're going to do is they're going to give us 3 sort of benchmark visits throughout the school year, going through our schools and sort of assessing the quality of instruction and helping sort of diagnose where we need to go next. They're also going to, I'm really excited about this part. I mentioned earlier the 2-hour grade level collaboration. This contract will enable us to provide our teachers with really clear support and structure and build capacity in them to be able to really analyze student work and plan together. We're going to be focusing on the unit level to start. The other thing that this contract with instruction partners will enable us to do is build capacity in our instructional coaches. So, there's like layers to the support, and we want to ensure that our instructional coaches are all operating with the same shared framework, same basic practices. So we are very excited about the potential for this. But the other thing that I think will be great, just sort of, speaking to the question that I was asked earlier about outcomes, is that this is going to enable us to track the state of instruction in our buildings throughout the year, which I think is really exciting.
So I will entertain a motion to approve that contract.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
He's fastest with the unmute button, and Ryan bringing in a quick second. Thank you very much. A discussion and or questions for Dr. Camacho and team?
Just a quick question. I'm sorry to belabor it. So they were involved in year one. They're coming back in year 3. How do we handle in the mid-year when they weren't here? Obviously, I don't know if that was a pandemic thing or obviously still was important, but how did we handle it in the interim?
Yeah, we actually made an explicit choice not to bring them back in year 2 because we knew that we had some foundation building to do. Like what was so hard, and what the team lead and I talked about a lot in year 1 is like they didn't have anything to attach their work to, right? Like we didn't have an instructional model, we didn't have instructional coaches. It was just like we needed them to direct service everything, and they're not here all the time, right? So it felt like a waste of money, and I thought it would be best for us to shore up our systems and structures so they could attach to them and then come back, and help us advance that work. Good question.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments before we move to a vote? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Excellent. Excellent. That also passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Dr. Camacho and team. We look forward to that additional partnership. All right, so next up is just an Empowerment Zone Board of Directors meeting schedule for 2021, but I think that was like left from before. But one thing I think
there was a contract for the Relay Graduate School of Education.
Oh, did I miss that? Oh, yes, F, that got run together. I was like, hold on, it's G. How do we get to G? Okay, so F is here. My line broke here. So Relay Graduate School of Education contract 2021. Take it away, Dr. Camacho and team.
Yeah, so this is in the amount of roughly $200,000, and again, funded via the additional ESSER dollars.
So this is another thing I'm really excited about. We've got a great principal team, great assistant principal team, great instructional coaches in place. But what we're lacking right now is like a shared vision for what instructional leadership should be. So it's now time for us to get that going, because we've done all the work of making sure we're aligned on vision, and we're all on the same team, we're in the same direction. Now, what is going to be our shared language, our shared framework? So this training is actually intensive 3-week training that takes place over the summer. And then the principals will also engage in regular touch points throughout the school year with other colleagues across the nation who are learning, tangible skills and observation and feedback cycles, really helping us all sort of operate as one as we give teachers feedback on practice that is, respectful and thoughtful and targeted. And so we're really excited about that. Think that this training is really going to help advance our work next year and set our principals up for success.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the Relay Graduate School of Education contract for 21-22.
So moved.
Ryan was first on that one. Second from Jeff. Thank you. Any questions or discussion around that? My comment here would be, I'm just continue to see the great resources being, I don't want to say showered down, but that our staff are getting the resources that they need to be able to help do their jobs. Oftentimes I think you see the narrative around just like people should work harder or more. And it's around this education of helping our team continue to be the best and continue to be able to give our families and students that we serve the best. So thank you for that. So seeing other comments or questions?
I have just a question, just because I'm unfamiliar. The training in the summer, I love, Dr. Camacho, that you mentioned that this will bring, like a professional community to principals kind of nationwide, maybe even globally. How, in terms of the training and what this particular program offers the principals, does membership in a professional organization, like how do we ensure it goes beyond just the 3-week summer intensive?
Yes, I love that question. So again, it's the accountability for our principal team is going to be very high next year. They'll be presenting to you all regularly on progress for like their goals and the continuous improvement framework. And I believe it's critical that we give them the tools to be able to really lean into some of this work. And so in addition to sort of the external support they're getting, it's really baked into our continuous improvement cycles next year, because we will have, again, a shared language, shared tools. The other thing that's really exciting is that because of this, the size of our contract, we're also being given an instructional platform, instructional leadership platform that'll enable principals to go in and track and give feedback. It's called Whetstone, but it's coming to us for free because of the size of our contract. And I think that's going to be another tool that'll enable us to sit around the table together, look at our data, and make adjustments and pivots as needed.
Awesome, thanks.
Anything else? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Yay. Any opposition? Abstentions? All right, hearing none, that also passes unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Camacho and team. Now we're on G on our discuss and consider list. And so our meeting schedule, so for new board members as well, we'll get those populated on your calendar. I did want to note that we will be potentially looking at doing some either in-face meetings coming up here soon and or in a hybrid capacity, so that we are able to see each other face to face for future board meetings. And we will coordinate that and kind of work with everybody to meet whatever your either demands are or ability are to be able to meet face to face. I know I loved that we used to do our board meetings rotating around our school buildings and getting to see our spaces, as I think that that's an important thing for us to be able to walk our halls and see our buildings. So I think that that's another great part of that. So we will continue to do that. And so watch for those invitations on the calendar. Anything to add on upcoming board meetings, Dr. Camacho? Okay, so then the next part of our agenda is going to be public comment. Prior to public comment, I'd like to give Dr. Camacho time to be able to make a statement prior to our public comment.
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it. And I have a paper here, y'all, because I wanted to make sure that I hit all the key points of what I want to say tonight. So bear with me a little bit. So I'm really grateful to be here with all of you this evening. I love this community, and it's been such an honor to be your Empowerment Zone Chief every day for the past 2 years. I moved here to do the hard work of transforming schools on the west side of South Bend. I was inspired by your commitment to eliminating academic and social emotional opportunity gaps and to cultivating the greatness that exists within each child. That mission speaks to my deepest values and has shaped all of my work in the South Bend Empowerment Zone. I want to take this moment to explicitly address what's been happening in South Bend lately, which I know many of us know about, which has been extremely painful for our community and for me personally. As you may have seen on YouTube, I interacted with an officer in the halls of Coquillard Elementary School on April 21st. And per my usual responsibilities as schools chief, I asked the officer the reason for his visit to our school, given that I did not recognize him. And this was the first time he visited us this academic year. This is a question I ask of any visitor to any school campus who I don't know. What hurts our community in particular is that this has gone viral because my asking for clarity around an officer's visit to a school, which is my job, is being framed as anti-police. It saddens me that all of our work in service to our students and families is being mischaracterized and misconstrued. And in reflecting on this moment, it reminded me of my Uncle Barney. So if you all just bear with me for a moment. And I'm gonna try to keep it together here. So Uncle Barney was my favorite uncle. Here's a picture of us together when I was about 4 years old. Actually, that's not, there it is. Here's the picture of me when I was 4 and my Uncle Barney over here cheering me on like he always did. And as a child, his big smile and his willingness to readily play any game I wanted made me feel so special. As an adult, I enjoyed his appetite for conversation and connection. As my family would say, he would talk your ears off if you let him. My Uncle Barney gave most reassuring hug. In his arms, I always felt safe. My Uncle Barney was a police officer and proudly served for 34 years. He passed away in January. I wish he was here to give me a hug now and to guide me through this hard moment. I share the story of Uncle Barney because I want to reiterate my appreciation for our officers. I know the risks and dangers they endure. In the Empowerment Zone, we also have principals and teachers whose spouses and children are good, thoughtful, courageous police officers like my uncle. My job as the chief in the Empowerment Zone is to know exactly who enters our schools and walks our hallways, especially unannounced. That is my responsibility, and my community expects me to do so. It is a central part of my job. It also is part of my job to determine, together with this board, the policies and procedures that keep our schools safe. And don't forget, I'm not only the chief of the South Bend Empowerment Zone, I'm also a mother of 2 children who attend Coquillard. I take my responsibility to know every person who enters the building as seriously as any protective mother would. I believe that there is a role for police in maintaining school safety, and I hope to sit together with the appropriate leaders of the South Bend Police Department, the Empowerment Zone Board, and the South Bend Community Schools Corporation Board to make decisions together about the policies that should guide us here. After the incident, I immediately reached out to the police department leadership so we could work this out directly. While we had an initial meeting on April 29th, I look forward to the day when we come to get to the table and discuss these important issues with mutual respect for each other's work. It may not be easy, but I believe that we can come together and devise a way forward, rooted in respect for each other and guided by research and best practice in education. This morning, I woke up to this message and several other messages like this. And in spite of these vicious attacks and the character assassination that I'm currently the target of, I do know enough to know that all of the vitriol really isn't about me. It's about the lack of resolution and clarity about the role of police in schools and our community. And while I do believe in police accountability and reform, I also believe that thoughtful policy protocols and agreed upon expectations are protective for all involved, students, staff, and the police. This moment presents an opportunity for us all. Now is the time to come together across lines of difference to outline the critical agreements, policies, and procedures that enable clarity for all, police, school staff, families, and students. I moved my family to South Bend because I believe in the shared vision of educational equity that we are all working toward, a high quality, excellent school for every child, especially our most vulnerable. I stand by our shared vision. I know that the vitriol that has been directed at me does not represent the true values of the South Bend community, and that instead, South Bend is a place where school leaders have tried to model love and respect for every person and every child, regardless of their social class or skin color. And so tonight, I call on the community, members of our community, to prioritize the conversation about the role of police in our schools and to get us all back to the table. Education leaders, leaders of our police department, and city leaders need to rebuild trust and put our heads together now. We owe it to our children to have this important conversation and to have it with empathy, honesty, and courage. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Camacho, for sharing that. And I would say before I make my statement that your Uncle Barney would be proud. So on behalf of myself and the board of directors of the South Bend Empowerment Zone, we want to say that we 100% support and more importantly, trust in your leadership. And we stand behind you to create the change that's needed to continue to transform these schools and to empower our community. And I look forward to working with you and anybody else who's willing to continue to do this work, and our board stands behind you as well. And I think it's clear through presentations tonight, this statement, how thorough and dedicated you are to this work and how blessed our South Bend community has been to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
So now we will move to the public comment portion of our meeting. We've normally only had one or two. We have a long list tonight. I will follow some of the South Bend School Corporation protocols regarding public comment here. Those are limiting public comment to 3 minutes. We will only go for a total of 45 minutes, but these will be shared in their entirety with the board of directors. I will only read first names. I will not read addresses. I will read comments as they were sent to us in order. I will read them as is, unedited. Grammatical issues and misspellings I will pronounce as best I can. And anything that does have profanity, I will stop reading that comment and move on to the next comment. So first comment comes from Mindy. Are we ever going back to in-person learning? Sheltered e-learning makes no sense. My kids need face-to-face learning. If we're going to have them back in the school, why not teach them instead of making them do e-learning while in the classroom? They have been out of the classroom for over a year and are suffering for it. With the vaccines becoming available and lower infection rate, I see no reason for them not to be in the classroom with the teacher there teaching them. From Elise, I think, or Elise, Dr. Camacho has in no jeopardized the safety of her students, faculty, or parents in the years I have known her. I do believe this incident came from miscommunication. After reviewing the body cam footage, Dr. Camacho did not seem rude or against the officer being there. She simply wanted more information. We are living in a time, unfortunately, when not everyone can depend on police officers for safety, and some students may have felt this way. She was looking out for her students and staff, making sure everyone is safe is always the priority. However, the police department was out of line for popping in without at least checking in the office. Just as the police department has policies, so does the school, and I believe that this problem would not have occurred had the officer stopped at the office front desk to simply check in. Maybe Dr. Camacho would have been more open to allowing him to check the halls of the building. I have known Dr. Camacho for over 10 years, and she has never been put in a situation where her character as a woman or or an administrator was challenged and questioned. I firmly stand beside her. Next comment is from Crystal. Dr. Camacho is a fierce advocate and a proven leader with outstanding outcomes for children. I have had firsthand experience of learning from and benefiting from her brilliance, belief in our children, a dedication to justice. The video that is circulating shows a leader making a reasonable and sound decision to ensure that law enforcement in her schools are aligned on the purpose and protocols. Dr. Camacho is putting children first, not the ego or feelings of an adult. The police officer stated explicitly that his feelings would not be hurt if she did not want him in school, and yet his report back to dispatch displayed a fragile ego and an adult focused on himself rather than the well-being of elementary children. I applaud Dr. Camacho for putting children and their physical, mental, and emotional well-being above the ego of a police officer who had no right to be walking around an elementary school building uninvited. South Bend and the Empowerment Zone are lucky and privileged to have charismatic, dedicated, and sound leader in Dr. Camacho leading the way. Many, including South Bend Police Department, could learn a lot from being in proximity to Dr. Camacho and her intentionality as a leader who is able to collaborate and build bridges across all lines of difference. You are not alone in this fight, Dr. Camacho. I proudly stand alongside you and so many others who are supportive and unequivocally believe in you as a leader. Someone could watch my time. I'm at 4 minutes. Timothy, I'm writing to convey my strong support for Dr. Cheryl Camacho. She's a strong leader for student and school safety, and she's committed to a positive partnership with police. I urge the board to maintain its support for Dr. Camacho and insist on establishment of clear protocols for the police division to follow in its engagement with the schools of the South Bend Empowerment Zone. Next. Oh, this is a duplicate, the same name. It looks like the same comment. Next up is William. Thank you so much for the care and concern you give to our scholars here in the Empowerment Zone. I know that there is a lot of tension around our city and our school system concerning the police as well as other entities that affect our children. And this is why I'm glad you made the decision to address the officer as to his business being in the school. I believe more than anything that in all we do, we must get an understanding. Both sides must come to an agreement on how to move forward in peace and harmony. Keep up the great work. We appreciate your dedication. Next up is Shirley. I write in support of the actions taken by Dr. Cheryl Camacho, South Bend Empowerment Zone Chief, in April 2021 at Coquille Elementary School. Dr. Camacho was poised and practiced inquiry to better understand the situation. While I do not know the current and historical context of police officers entering school buildings unannounced and unaccompanied, it's critical to understand its purpose and outcome for this to truly be a practice without supporting students' physical and psychological safety. Practices that are constructed, standardized, and frequently communicated, especially with the leader of each building and central office, foster trust among all stakeholders. Given the police officers' body cam footage, the question is not about whether police officers are welcome in the school. The question must be reframed. To what extent are the actions taken by all stakeholders in the school community, administrators, board members, police, in best interest of students' physical safety, emotional well-being, and academic improvement? Dr. Camacho is an advocate for all students and always puts the interests and needs of her students and school community first. She is a highly educated and deeply committed leader that deserves the respect of those in formal authority to engage in collaborative solution design. Next up is Samantha. My name is Samantha Smith, and I'm the proud principal of Wilson Elementary School. I'm so blessed and proud to have such a phenomenal leader. I fully support and trust Dr. Camacho's leadership. I took an oath not only to teach our students, but to keep them safe as well. There has been a lot of unjustly behavior from police towards people of color, which has caused mistrust and anxiety. In order for there to be a strong union or partnership between schools and police, it is crucial for police to be aligned with our vision and mission, as well as our core beliefs of repairing harm by shifting away from exclusionary discipline practices and restoring relationships between community, students, and educators. I ask that you please stand with us and not against us when preparing children for a world of success and prosperity. Our children are depending on everyone to make a positive impact on our city, nation, and world. Next up is Eva. I want to thank Dr. Camacho for standing up for the safety of her students, especially given the purpose of the empowerment or the purpose of EZ and issues around police overreach that are in today's climate. I hope you will support Dr. Camacho's actions. Inquiring as to the purpose of police on campus is not only not wrong, but a courageous move to ensure students are treated with respect. The comments from the police officer captured on his body camera are clearly disrespectful. To call her some doctor when she clearly stated her role and purpose is clearly a disregard for her authority and therefore the work that this board oversees. Now more than ever, she needs a clear sign of support from the board so that she may continue the work she's been asked to do. Please do not let this disrespectful action from one police officer derail the important equity work she's doing. Next up is Jessica. I'm writing in full support of Dr. Camacho as a former principal and current district leader. I'm inspired by the way that she leads for equity, keeping the experience of students at the center of her decision-making. I watched the video of Dr. Camacho's interaction with the officer at Coquiller Elementary School, and I think her response was exemplary. All educational leaders, especially during our nation's current climate, can learn from her actions. I watched as Dr. Camacho pushed for partnership and clear protocols, which is exactly what she should be doing. I heard her say that she is disrupting past problematic practices. Again, the sign of a strong and focused leader ready to make change, all in the name of what's best for kids. This is what it looks like to lead for equity. It's clear to me that Dr. Camacho does want students to have positive interactions with police officers and also wants the expectations for everyone to be clear. As an educator, administrator, and mother of 2 Black boys, I hope the school leaders of my children's school lead with the same purpose, focus, professionalism, and advocacy as Dr. Camacho. Next up is Ginger. After watching the video of the incident at Coquillard School, I would like to state that as a teacher, I see Dr. Camacho did nothing wrong. I support her decision to want a discussion with the administrative police to set up a policy of who enters the school and what type of interactions take place. Having police officers in our schools building relationships with students is beneficial for everyone. However, we do need to be very selective of those officers are, of who those officers are and how they interact with our students. I feel she made a safe judgment call for all students. This is a duplicate. We got a couple duplicates here. This is Jennifer. When I saw a body cam video that was being shared around on social media a few days ago, I clicked on it, and at first I was sure that it was no big deal. Dr. Camacho was completely professional and polite and warm. The officer's stated intention was to see that people in the school were okay, and she told him they were okay. She emphasized that it wasn't that she was uncomfortable with him, but that she just wanted to have a conversation with the board chair and the police and the chief and make sure everyone was on the same page. When the police officer said, "We're the good guy," she responded, "I know you are, and I appreciate that." To me, this video was supposedly controversial. To me, this video that was supposedly controversial seemed like a snooze fest. But at the end, when the officer told a colleague to watch the video and said, "You'll be disgusted," that was jarring. Dr. Camacho did nothing wrong, contrary to what people are saying. The school she runs have been very welcoming to police during her 2-year tenure, holding a luncheon to honor police, inviting them to various celebrations in the school. Her stated concern was to be sure everyone was on the same page about the role of police in the schools in their non-emergency capacities, such as building relationships. Relationships are a two-way street, so it makes sense to want to have clear expectations and for both parties to know what is going on and to find a process both parties can agree to. My own elementary age child becomes very scared and anxious when she sees an unexpected police officer inside her school. It makes her feel fearful that someone is about to be arrested or that there might be an active shooter in the building that the police are looking for. It leaves her on edge the rest of the day and makes it hard for her to concentrate. At the same time, she has enjoyed meeting police when their presence was planned and they were present for an event that she often thinks and she often thinks about a career as a police officer. The South Bend Empowerment zone should be empowered to engage in building relationships with community partners that create best conditions for learning and that best support the children in their charge. It seems like the police officer felt very hurt by the interaction because he sounded so bitter afterwards in the video. But he also seemed incredibly dismissive of Dr. Camacho for no good reason, and the sneering contempt in his voice when he said, "Doctor," has bothered me in the days since I encountered this video. Dr. Camacho was polite and professional throughout the encounter, and she was fulfilling her responsibilities as a leader in the school district. Although the officer described himself as a peacekeeper and described building relationships as the purpose of the walkthroughs, he seemed to be trying to provoke Dr. Camacho into an argument, and his comment once she was out of earshot was incredibly disrespectful. To me, this makes it clear the empowerment zone should have the power to decide who may come into their schools asking for greater. That three?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a 3-minute limit
Perfect.
there.
Yep. Thank you for helping watch my time there. This comment is from Tana. I strongly suspect Dr. Camacho is being targeted. She isn't even remotely anti-police. She's trying to work in partnership with cops. I support her decision to question the officer that day and a protocol ensuring principals escort officers on walkthroughs. Real News Michiana is not a legitimate news source. It's just a slanderous opinion blog on the internet for a specific audience of racists. It's unfortunate the South Bend Empowerment Zone has to respond to these false accusations at all. Mainstream media never should have picked it up. It's deeply concerning that SBPD is gaslighting us again. This is a pattern of behavior with the department. Someone asks a legitimate question in good faith, and SBPD claims they're being victimized, and the community is creating division. SBPD says they want to build trust with community, but you don't heal a wound by blaming the blood on the floor. Next up is Allie. I applaud Dr. Camacho for her bravery throughout this and always being willing to do what's right for our kids. I feel that only one side of the story is being portrayed in the public now. Police should not be welcomed in schools for the obvious. Police should be welcomed in school for the obvious emergency situations. They should also be invited if they are willing to be part of our community and embrace the culture of our schools and children. I would like to see the sincerity of their words backed up with actions to have meaningful interactions and build positive relationships with our children. I would like to see the police respect the integrity of the safe learning space we strive to create for our children and communicate with the appropriate staff before their presence is made. Again, thank you, Dr. Camacho, for your bravery and leadership on this matter, and I trust you will continue to protect our community and children. Gabriella. Good evening. My name is Gabriella. I'm an instructional coach here at Navarre Middle School. Dr. Camacho is a strong advocate for children and makes sure all her adults have training when it comes to interactions with children. She ensures that all personnel are vision aligned with the empowerment zone. Please look at our ongoing professional development topics such as zones of regulation, culturally responsive positive behavior intervention systems, restorative justice practices, crisis prevention training, with a focus on de-escalation, anti-bias training, etc. I believe that her instinct to question a person, in this case, a police officer, who has not been trained like those of us in the empowerment zone, was completely in step with her leadership practices. I'm also dismayed at the behavior of the police officer to push such disdain on a public figure's name, as well as air the situation on the general radio, like a type of retaliation tactic. I believe the officer should be written up for such practice. I would encourage the board to pursue accountability with this officer. I look forward to hearing the portion of the story that was not captured on camera, the reason the officer turned on his camera in the first place. Also, I hope everyone was able to see the blatant bias in the article that was written. I hope the board also deems it necessary to investigate the legal matters in protection of the empowerment zone and Dr. Camacho. The work we are doing is incredible, and I would hate that we lose momentum for our kids because we hold everyone to a higher standard here in the empowerment zone. Next up is Ben. As we close out one of the most challenging years in history, today's education leaders have faced a barrage of leadership challenges at every step. Keep communities safe through a worldwide health pandemic, maximize learning and well-being for all students each and every day, and lead their communities to reckon with enduring systematic racism that is undeniably present in nearly every facet of our complex society. Equity-centered leadership places children, especially the most vulnerable, at the center of each leadership decision. While uncomfortable and occasionally disruptive, this leadership requires student needs to come before adult desires. Through her words and actions, through recent events, it's clear that Dr. Cheryl exemplifies what it means to bravely lead for equity. It is with deep respect that I offer my unconditional support for Dr. Camacho and both her right and her decision to ensure all of her students to feel safe at all times in their schools. This is from Teresa. I am very concerned that this whole picture of this situation was not shown in its entirety. It was very one-sided and not clear about the officer's behavior leading up to this. The officer was not shown in this instance, and the information that led up to this point was not explained either. I believe this put Cheryl Camacho in a very compromised position publicly. This was not completely revealing of the officer's question and was not completely revealing of the officer's questions and using his authority possibly not in the best interest of our students. Everyone entering a school building has to check in with the office because of the safety and security of our students that we are here to protect. No exceptions. Anyone not checking in with the office is considered a security breach, even a police officer. This applies to everyone. You know how critical it is when you're caring for children, and especially our parents, especially our parents' students. We are very protective of our families and will remain that way as necessary. I feel you showed Dr. Camacho in a very bad light in our community when her only intent was to have a positive influence on our community. Being new to our area, I feel you have not been welcoming and have embarrassed the good she is trying to do for us here in South Bend, and that is very disappointing, and I expect better from our police department. Next up is Sandra. Where can I find an agenda prior to these meetings? Next up is Mark. Dr. Cheryl Camacho is change. She is the future of education and the future of this country. I'm a dad with 2 teenage kids, and in any community, we progress forward. We try to better ourselves every day. We work to better ourselves from past mistakes through dialogue and communication. Dr. Cheryl Camacho sees the future clearly. She sees a change through dialogue. That's how we advance as a society through an officer's body cam and his comments. We see and hear how badly change is needed. Dr. Cheryl Camacho is that leader, helping all of us move forward through dialogue and communication. She has expressed with great sensitivity that a dialogue needs to happen with the chief prior to a walkthrough. We need more leaders like her who see the future clearly to help us all become a better society. Next up is Issa. I'm honored to work with a dynamic leader who truly exemplifies what it means to be a champion for children and communities. Dr. Camacho's passion, determination, love, and care for the students and families that we serve is unlike anything I've witnessed before. I'm excited to continue to learn from, learn with, and create true systematic change with her and our team, all in service to our beautiful, smart, talented children and the South Bend community. I had the pleasure of first meeting Dr. Camacho in 2019 as she was building her team, and I still vividly remember her passion and unwavering commitment to center students and families in all that she does. During our interview, she expressed her non-negotiables in the team that she was building, an unwavering commitment to transforming academic and life outcomes for our children in South Bend, seeing our work as social justice work and not merely as school turnaround work, ensuring that we held equity in all that we do and never sacrificed excellence or the pursuit of, because our children deserve the very best. In 15 years of being in the profession and being mentored by great leaders, no one has inspired me as much as Dr. Camacho did in that initial hour-and-a-half conversation. From that moment on, I knew that she was a leader that I yearned to learn from, learn with, and make a positive impact in the community. I have been by her side for the last 17 months since that initial conversation. Dr. Camacho is a leader who truly values staff and community input and inspires high levels of trust due to her responsiveness and optimism. Her commitment to ensuring that her staff feel heard and that she is able to respond to the opportunities and challenges inherent in the schools that she is now responsible for became a crucial moment in her tenure. She has made tremendous improvements to our equity and anti-racism initiatives, enhanced the academic rigor of our schools, improved our student and school support operations, repaired previously damaged relationships with community members and families, elevated the importance on protecting and adequately supporting our students who have IEPs, 504s, our English language learners, and all who are part of vulnerable student populations, and develop systems to do so, earned the respect and trust of our teachers and staff, increased teacher pay, installed teacher leadership teams, strengthened the quality of staff in our schools, and much more. This is the type of leader that Dr. Camacho is, a leader who exemplifies and demands the best out of each of us, and in the process makes us better leaders every single day. Dr. Camacho's loyalty and commitment to students, staff, and families is overwhelming. With Dr. Camacho, there is never a question of where she stands or what she values. She is truly South Bend Empowerment Zone's dream leader. She loves her career. She works extremely hard, even much more than others in similar roles as hers. She is extremely successful, and the community, school community, and external respects and values.
Mr. President,
3.
we're at a time.
Next up is Greg. As a parent, even though I'm in another state, I want to reach out to you and commend you for the way you handled the situation and police officer that I saw on YouTube. I'm sure you saw this response. I'm sure you saw his response outside your building regarding the interaction with you is disgusting. It really showcases how the ego of police officers is getting in the way of good policing. You were very kind and professional. There was nothing disgusting about your interaction other than his recounting it. We used to be taught to trust police and not to fear them. Unfortunately, today in the news and on YouTube, there are accounts every day of police overstepping their bounds, violating rights, and brutalizing citizens. They now have desecrated the American flag in direct violation of US flag code by changing the color of the stripes and making it their own. If that doesn't scream at us against them mentality, I don't know what does. When a symbol of the Punisher in their desecrated American flag colors is the new go-to stickers on many police department vehicles, it is hard for me to see how children would look at that along with the stories in everyday news and social media and feel safe to go to the police for help. Every day our rights and liberties are being tested. The more we become complacent, the more tyranny will grow. Our children should know their rights as US citizens, and the educators we trust to protect them should start by protecting their Fourth Amendment rights to be secure in one's papers and effects, i.e. random searches with drug dogs, etc. Not to forget, children of color have a whole separate and justified fear of law enforcement. School should be their safety zone. Police should come when invited for positive reasons and educational purposes, unless only there is an actual emergency. An average of 1,000 citizens are killed by police every year, but when you subtract car accidents, police deaths across law enforcement agencies are under 70. So who needs protecting from who? Until police clean up their public image, we need to cancel the officer-friendly programs and focus on reality. We need to question authority in a free society in order to protect our liberties. That should be taught in school. For those who blindly support police departments without any question, don't realize that rights are like muscles. You use them or lose them. In closing, I would like to encourage anyone who doubts the rising authoritarianism of police departments to search police violating rights and First Amendment audits on YouTube. While I don't agree with all of the First Amendment auditors' techniques, what they expose regularly on a daily basis is exactly what we need to be worried about. I wish you the best of luck in your discussions with the chief, and I commend you for realizing we need to do things differently. Maria. I wanted to reach out to show my appreciation for the school board and to Dr. Camacho. I'm a teacher at Coquiller Elementary School, and I have seen firsthand the positive changes that have come since the start of the South Bend Empowerment Zone. Our students are the reason we come to work every day. They deserve an environment that is welcoming, warm, and most importantly, safe. Dr. Camacho has centered her work around students and families first, especially when it comes to safety. She has been transparent from the beginning with her expectations of any person interacting with our students and how they must truly believe in the South Bend Empowerment Zone's vision and mission. Dr. Camacho and her team work endless hours to ensure the school is providing the best possible learning environment for our students. She is physically present and visible in our buildings, which mean the world to our students. She is caring and compassionate, and knows the values of a true leader. I am beyond proud to work in the South Bend Empowerment Zone in Cook Elementary School. Jennifer, for anyone that is still in complete denial that there is a major divide and disconnect between the public servants that are supposed to protect and serve the public and the general public, need only watch one video on YouTube titled "Miami Officer Kneels into Pregnant Black Woman's Neck and Tasers Her." The video itself is horrific, but what is important is the ex-officer who has founded the Police Brutality Matters. I support the school representatives' reservations. Next up, Sharon. As a former colleague of Dr. Camacho's and an educator for 20 plus years, I implore the board to realize that she is an incredible leader who has been and will continue to establish a vision in collaboration with her community and work together to enact that so that students in her care can thrive. I watched the body cam footage from the police officer, read Dr. Camacho's perspective and opinion piece. Dr. Camacho is correct that despite the positive intentions of police officers, many children see their presence, especially their presence if that officer is a stranger, as scary and threatening. Given that all community members, including the police, want the children in their community to feel safe, Dr. Camacho's request to meet with the chief of police to ensure there is a shared vision and approach to officer presence in their schools in non-emergency situations seems incredibly wise and centers students and their safety, physical and psychological. Please do not hesitate to support Dr. Camacho as she continues her work to support students in her buildings. And as a board, I encourage you to do everything you can to clear the path and help her be able to focus her time and energy on that role. Lisa. I'm a career public school educator and leader in the field of whole child-centered school culture and social emotional learning. Colleagues of mine shared the recent news story related to Dr. Cheryl Camacho and her interaction with a local police officer in a school setting. I felt compelled to voice my support for Dr. Camacho upon reading the media stories and watching the video of the incident in question. Creating a safe space in schools for children is a complex task that requires deeply knowing the individual children in that school and the community-specific needs and context. Watching the video and reading Dr. Camacho's response, it is clear that she understands the nuanced perspective of her students and is advocating gracefully for their needs in this instant. It is my professional experience. Not all children feel safe when they encounter an unknown police officer. I believe that it is not the outcome that any of us want, but it is current reality, and we have to grapple with and solve together. I hope that this board and the local community can support Dr. Camacho in her efforts to create safe schools, strengthen the relationship with local police, and do so in a way where the student needs, not the grown-ups, are put first. Next up is Richard. As a former elementary teacher for 9 years, I was quite concerned to watch the conversation, which was captured by a body camera between South Bend police officer and Dr. Camacho at Cook Elementary School. Much as Dr. Camacho demonstrated, I was taught to keep my students out of the way of harm of any form. With this charge, great teachers and principals are thoughtful and intentional about the learning communities they build and maintain for students and families. This includes thoughtfulness about community relationships. Too many students and families, not only in South Bend, but in communities across the country, have been traumatized by experiences with police. As a teacher, I was trained to operate deliberately with respect and sensitivity for the experiences and needs of my students, particularly when they were quite different from my own as a white person. Dr. Camacho took the same point of view in her conversation with the officer. She asked for a conversation with the chief to be deliberate and intentional about why, how, and when police enter the school. There was no danger when the police entered uninvited. If anything, this intentional approach could have led to greater connection and trust between students and police. However, the officer's disrespect, arrogance, and lack of empathy and curiosity demonstrated most by his response upon exiting the school reinforce why too many families and students mistrust police. Dr. Camacho is an exceptional, intentional leader who South Bend should be proud of and support fully. We need more leaders like her to ensure more inclusive schools that prepare our students to thrive throughout life. Next up is Annie. I recently learned of the interaction between Dr. Cheryl Camacho and a local police officer at Quiller Elementary School. I have known Dr. Camacho for over a decade and have always admired her as an educational leader. My admiration has deepened after watching the boy cam video and reading the context surrounding the incident. I saw someone who deeply knows her students and so understands that at least a portion of them might react with fear upon seeing a police officer walking through their school building, particularly one they don't already know. Since her job is to help cultivate an environment where every child feels safe to learn, she needs to proactively create the conditions to make that true. Setting a vision for how non-emergency interaction should happen between police and schools, ensuring all staff in both systems are aligned around and invested in that vision, and then operationalizing it on the ground seems like the exact right leadership move to make. I contrast that with the actions of the police officer and anyone who is supporting him to blast a video on social media that will surely only serve to fan flames of division and distract from any productive work that needs to happen between the two institutions. Obviously, this entire situation sits in the context of the systematic racism that continues to haunt us all. As our country struggles to be honest about our own history, understand the root cause of our continued disparities, and take action to address them. In this context comes Dr. Camacho, a real leader who I urge you not to just support, but whose time and attention needs protecting for the work that truly matters, which is not engaging in silly social media stunts with the police union, but in doing the real work of staff, students, and families, as well as with the leadership of the police department and other community partners in South Bend.
Mr. President?
Yep.
Just a quick time check for you. We've just gone under 10 minutes left in the public comment period.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Next up is Connor. I can only speak as an outsider on so many fronts. I'm a white, albeit privileged male who has been fortunate enough to be somewhat successful despite my own faults. I'll just lay it out there. I have a problem with alcohol. I don't believe for the slightest moment that I would be as theoretically successful as I am had I been born Black or brown. I think that is okay to admit now. I attended Clay High School and found a home there. It was only recently that I realized how much some of my friends suffered during this time. Maybe I was naive, but so was most of America. We are no longer in the era of Bull Connor. However, I know that the answer is nothing this. I trust Dr. Camacho. I would trust her with my soul. That doesn't matter to many. The real issue lies with people believing news about Propel that are attempting to do good. We also have our sack of rocks. The important thing is that we attempt to do well without harming another. Let's start there before we tear each other down. This is a duplicate. This is from Tyler. I would like to voice my support for Dr. Camacho and the members of the South Bend Empowerment Zone. Dr. Camacho has been a dedicated leader in the task of creating equitable education experience for our children in the city. The leadership and vision she brings to the Empowerment Zone is invaluable. Her words and actions show us daily how to face resistance with focus and dignity, how to grow in the face of adversity, and how to speak truth to power on behalf of our children. I fully support her ability to not only understand the situations and problems that occur because of them, but also find solutions that are in the best interest of the safety of our school community. I appreciate her for empowering the voices of parents to advocate on behalf of their children and for her ability to give voice through community members and partnerships. I'm often reminded The work that we do here is going to change the trajectory of families and give opportunity for the kind of change we want throughout the whole district. I am proud to stand and work with Dr. Cheryl Camacho and the Empowerment Zone. Next up is Dr. Beth. SBEZ Board of Directors. I wanted to express my public support for the actions undertaken by Dr. Camacho on April 21st, 2021. As a leader charged with the academic, social, and emotional development, well-being, and safety of students within her school buildings, Dr. Camacho responded to the unannounced presence of a police officer with proactivity and respect. She was reasonable, respectful, clearly communicated her needs, and communicated a plan for follow-up action. Our schools are not places for patrol. They are places of focused learning and work. The entry of an adult at any time not directly related to that purpose is distracting, unhelpful, and depending on behavior, potentially harmful. Given the officer had no specific reason for entering the building, his actions fall into that category. I'm glad you have a strong leader in Dr. Camacho at the helm to respond to the intrusion, engage with police leadership, and develop a stronger developmentally and mission-appropriate strategy for their engagement with children at school. I hope you are able to support her in this matter. Tanya. It is my honor to say I work with such determined leaders. She truly is an example of an empowered woman. It will be a year in the next couple of weeks that I met Dr. Camacho and the amazing team I work with. In short amount of time, the passion and dedication that Dr. Camacho has became contagious. As a parent and educator, she knows the impact a school environment has on our students. The type of work Dr. Camacho has endured is not for the faint of heart. I want to give her reassurance that we are down the right path. Although she is not a South Bend native, she knows just as much as the community surrounding our 5 schools how pivotal the change we are undergoing will be. Being a product of a failing school system similar to the corporation, I know the negative impact the schools had on my overall well-being as a child. It has become our due diligence to do right by our students because they deserve equity and justice. It is not a hidden fact that the community that our 5 schools have been failed and neglected time after time. However, despite the past, Dr. Camacho has been a strong leader to ensure that our students have the best learning experience. In the short amount of time that we have been able to highlight and celebrate the amazing students we have at each of our buildings, we truly know we are doing right by our students when they look forward to coming back and have champions who wait for them at the door. To Dr. Camacho, leadership team, teachers, and staff, but especially our families, they want us to remain prisoners of a failing system designed to keep us quiet without questioning authority. But they are trying to destroy us because we have brought awareness to prejudice practices that led us to where we are today. It will all be worth it one day when our little leaders go out into the world and succeed. Laura, this is my first year at Coquillard. I have taught for 6 years. In my past, I have not been treated as a professional. I have been told exactly how to run my classroom and have even had people come in and time my transitions from desk to carpet and told it was too slow. Since beginning in the Empowerment Zone, I'm treated as a professional. I've been told that I need to do what is best for the kids in my classroom. I was always frightened when I would see the board in my school in previous years. Now I'm excited when I see them. It is always a positive experience. Dr. Camacho always greets me warmly in the hallway and always seems to be happy to be in school around the students. Kayla. As a teacher at Coquillard, I can say that I think Dr. Camacho was right to ask the officer to leave in the moment. But you all might call me biased because this is my school and my leader. However, I'm a white, young, female, first grade teacher here at Coquillard, and I can see the difference between my childhood and the childhood of my students. Growing up, I never saw the police as trouble. I saw them as protection and here to keep me safe. This is what many of you have stated about this situation as well. However, the difference is that my students are mostly Black, and all they know about the police is what they show up that when they show up, it means trouble and trauma. I think walkthroughs are okay if done correctly in a way not to cause more trauma and harm to our students. That is all Dr. Camacho wanted. Here at Coquillard, we are trying to change past practices of police showing up to do random walkthroughs and locker searches. This adds to the trauma of our students. As for the BLM hallway display, my teaching partner and I put that up for Black History Month. We chose BLM because we wanted to show our students that we care, love, and support them, and that we are there for them. This is not a political stance. This is showing that we are in support of changing past policies and empowering our students. Next up is Jessica. My name is Jessica, and I'm a social worker. I'm the social worker lead at SBEZ. Since my coming here in October of 2019, I have been blown away by the innovative leadership that Dr. Camacho has brought into these 5 schools. Her initiative to nourish the body, mind, and spirit of each child is what drew me to applying at SBEZ. Her focus on the wholesome child is inspiring and refreshing in a system so riddled with discipline and constant negative consequences for children with the highest needs. She has created a welcoming environment for new ideas and interventions that help address the child's social emotional needs, as well as advocates for academic success. One example of this is by deciding to hire social workers and peace builders to strengthen each child's emotional and mental health. Positive change occurs when one is willing to break out of the norm. Instead of seeking to be reactive, she put trained staff in place to get to the core of the behavior. SBEC needs leaders like Dr. Camacho to continue the great work we are doing with support and compassion at the foremost of her leadership style. Thank you for your time. Next up is Noelia.
Mr. President, one final public comment, and we'll be at the end of our 45-minute time frame, as you said at the beginning of the session.
Yep. So last comment here then will be from Noelia, and it's a short one. The vision and mission that Dr. Camacho and her empowerment zone have in place is exactly what is needed for the students, families, and staff. And that will end. I made it about halfway on the reading there, and I ran out of water. I would like to thank everybody who sent a comment. I'll make sure that this document is presented to our board as well for review and our team. So with that, we are at 8:27, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I think that was a first from Ryan, second from Jeff. All right, then all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you, everybody who sent a comment. And please have a good remainder of your evening.